Now we're going to talk about overriding, and we are going to start out by creating a new project for this purpose from the command line app template, and we're going to call this overriding example. So we'll start out by creating a parent class and a subclass to that parent class. So we're going to go ahead and create a new class here, and we're going to call this class shape. Now I'm going to immediately create another class and call this circle. And we can start out in our shape class. So inside of shape, what we are going to do is we are going to simulate that we have different colors of shape by adding an attribute that we are calling color of type string. We're going to give shape a constructor that takes a string as parameter, and we're going to use that parameter to assign value to our attribute color. So up here we are also going to make a single method, and this method we are going to call public void draw, and inside of this method we're going to write system out println cannot draw shape. Now the reasoning behind this is because shape is somewhat an abstract concept. This means that if you're told to draw shape, well then you would either have to ask which shape am I going to draw, or you're going to arbitrarily choose a shape that you decide, but it would be an instance of some subtype of shape. So if you're asked to draw a shape, well then you may opt to draw a circle on a piece of paper. So if you cannot draw a shape, you need to have a specific type of shape that you're drawing in order to draw it. So this is why in the draw method here, we are going to print out cannot draw shape, because if you just create a shape object, well, then it has no concrete form. Now to fix this, we're going to go into circle, and we're going to have circle extend on the shape class. Oops, missing an S there. And so we're going to give circle a constructor that takes as parameter just the color of the circle, and this color we are going to pass to our constructor in our superclass by using the super keyword, and then just passing the value of the parameter here, which means that the constructor in our superclass is being called with the value that circle receives as a parameter here. Now we want to redefine the behavior of the draw method up here. And the way that we redefine behavior of methods in Java when we're talking about inheritance is through overriding. Now I can annote that I'm going to override a method by writing this add override up here. Now this is not required when we're doing overriding, but it's always a good idea to do this, because if we by some chance specify a method that we're going to override here that doesn't exist in our superclass, it's going to give us an error saying that, well, you cannot override this. So we're going to write public void draw, which was the definition that we had in our shape as well. This is the method that we had over here, and this is the method that we are going to redefine. And down here we're going to write system out println, and then actually we're going to write this is a circle, and then now we can go over here to main and observe what the implementation that we've just created means. So we can start up by creating a shape object, give it a color, red, and then we can go ahead and say s1.draw. Now remember that this is a shape object, and we specified in the shape class that the draw method in shape outputs cannot draw shape. So let's validate that this is actually the behavior that we are getting. Cannot draw shape. Now we're going to do the same thing with a circle. So we're going to see circle C1 equals new circle, and we're going to make this one blue. Then on the next statement, we're going to write C1.draw and see if we have successfully overridden the method from our shape class and redefined its behavior. So let's go ahead and run this code and see what happens. Cannot draw shape from this statement up here. This is a circle from this draw statement here. Right, so this is all working as intended. Now, of course, if we want to put our colors to use, what we could do is we could enable access to the private attribute color here in shape by adding an accessor method, public string get color. And down here we could return the value of our attribute color. And then here, if we want to paint a circle in a given color, what we could add is get color. Now I'm allowed to do this. Just write the get color method in this way. And the reason for that is because circle extends shapes, which means that any circle object can do whatever a shape object can do. And since shape has defined a get color method, this method is inherited by the circle class, and this means that we can access it this way. So we could try and rerun our program just to validate that this works. And now we are able to draw colored circles. Alright, now for the final part of this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate another method that we often override. So in Java, recall that all classes inherit from object. They do that someplace in the class hierarchy. If not directly, here for instance we are extending shape, then shape has to extend from object. So the superclass in your program will always extend from object even when it's not explicitly stated here. This means that there are a set of methods that we already have access to before doing anything. So if we go in here to main, for instance, what we could do is we could say system out println, and then we could go ahead and write c1.toString. Now we didn't define any toString method, but toString is a method that we have in our object class, and since circle inherits shape and shared inherits object, we have access to the toString method in circle objects as well. So if we go ahead and run our program again, we will see that the output here is some obscure string that shows us which kind of object that we are using the toString method on, but really this information is often not useful, at least not printed to the screen. So we can redefine the behavior of the toString method in circle, and we do that the exact same way as we did it with the draw method. So what we are going to do here is we're going to write public string toString. This now means that we are overriding the method toString, and down here, since this method specifies that it must return a string, what we can do is we can write return. This is a circle, which is, and then write. And maybe just to separate it from what we have up here, then we could write this. Whoops, this is a circle object, which is, and then the value that we return from the getColor method call. So let's go back to our code here and try and run it and see what happens with this output down here. This is a circle object, which is blue. So we have successfully defined the toString method. Now the reason that we often want to override the toString method is that Java in many places do default calls to the toString method. One way to illustrate this is that we could remove the .toString call here. Now Java is going to assume that since we want a text representation of this object, it can call the toString method of that object and get a textual representation of it. So this should produce an output similar to what we've just seen, and indeed this is what happens.